welcome here to the home of the national champion and Ferrari's biggest fan, as we are back to Formula 1 racing, of course, after that big summer break, and for the final race in October, which obviously is the 6th racing month. Obviously we will have, as you do know very well, 10 racing month, which is absolutely incredible. It started in the worst way possible for us. I couldn't believe it. So where to start with this disaster and one of the I would say maybe the least favorite circuits for the Scuderia Ferrari, which is of course the Zandvoort circuit, right? So we were definitely hoping for a 1-2, and I do believe it was possible because both drivers were progressively throughout obviously the weekend getting faster and faster. But in this first out of the final 10 Grand Prix race reactions, we will take a look over here what we so Ferrari could have done better in order to claim these huge trophies for the Dutch Grand Prix winners, and why it exactly didn't pan out the way it should. We obviously were very unlucky. That banky turn 3 has proved to be very unlucky 3 for both Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, but I do believe that it could have been so much better, and it was just the case of throwing the dice and not getting the right result. Also of course maybe we've seen the key race that will decide in the end the World Championship, because as you do know, it will be interesting to see obviously what happens, but very reminiscent of Malaysia 2016 obviously, which happened about 9 years ago, and we will tell you everything about it. We will take a look and check out exactly what it means for the overall drivers championship, how the race panned out, lots of surprising results, lots of the firsts that we have to tell you about, and then we will take a look at the drivers and constructors championship, and where to go as we heading obviously to our home sweet home, as you can see on that beautiful calendar there to my right, which is of course the Italian Grand Prix, which will be run at the Autodromo Nazionale Monza. So the race, the Grand Prix didn't start very well in the free practices for us. We obviously struggled to get into the top 10 in the free practice 1, but free practice 2 and 3, we were getting better and better. Hamilton had a bit of a spin but kept it out of the wall. We of course just wish that's exactly what would have happened when he actually when he had his mishap in the race. But overall, I thought we were getting quicker and quicker. When the qualifying came, I thought we played really well with especially for example with the qualifying 2, again going in a quick succession, then we easily made it through that very bunched up Q1. Actually the whole race, you could see, despite few of the obviously safety cars, you didn't have lots of the drivers being lapped as was predicted, because actually Formula 1's getting ever so closer. So it's really down to the tiny tenths here and there, which is very exciting. So yeah, for us, to make it into the Q3, I thought we had a great chance to put it to the 3rd and 4th place, because the orange, competitors were a bit untouchable because they had about a quarter of a second, and yeah, we've seen a very tight again, battle for the pole positions, just 0.012 seconds between Piastri and Norris. So as a result, obviously, we were expecting some fireworks, and there were very nice fireworks actually, around the Zandvoort, I have to say, which is very nice, especially that it's run during the day. And for us, we were hoping to put it 3rd and 4th, but because Red Bull and Racing Bulls made it 3rd and 4th, and a couple of tenths, if we were just 1 tenth quicker with Leclerc, for example, or even Hamilton, we could have been on the 4th, on the 2nd row, 4th, 5th place, as it was also Russell Garras. So we started 6th and 7th. Which obviously is not ideal. So almost like our drivers championship, we often qualify on the 3rd row or 4th, but again both cars into the Q3, and once the race started, obviously you could see that the drivers were really raring to go. There was a lot of action at the start. Leclerc did a great job to get ahead of Russell. I thought that was one of the moves of the day. And Hamilton was progressively being behind Russell, but then surprisingly Charles couldn't overtake overtake Hajar, who was then running fourth, and Hamilton couldn't overtake, obviously Russell, who was running sixth, and that was critical because once Norris cleared Verstappen, who's gotten him at the start, the McLarens pulled away, but you could see that Verstappen was unable to pull away from that sister Racing Bull, which was a big surprise because we just expected Hajar to just fell all the way to 7th, but no, he held on to that very surprising podium, as but that really should have been ours. I thought Leclerc made a couple of moves, but he never really truly sent it when it came to Hajar, unlike he did, for example, with Russell, which is a bit surprising, maybe given the fact that he's one, I guess. The other rookie is French, obviously, but the overall, I thought the strategy was good, was decent. Obviously, starting on the mediums, only Verstappen started on a softs, but started falling by the side, and then there was always a threat of the rain, right? And I thought everybody very quickly realized that it was just going to be a couple of drops here and there, but nothing that would warrant intermediate. So as a result, of course, what we did, as you do know, is that we put in the hard tires relatively quickly with Leclerc, and Hamilton was really trying hard to get, for example, ahead of Russell, right? And it was that lap 23, when it kind of unraveled for us in a bad way, because, at that point you could see that we tried to do the undercut, right? So why did we do the undercut? I believe it was the right strategy, because we could see guys like Lance Stroll, for example, going for it, and then, very quickly he was able to make up the places, and with the fresher tires, you are then able to go around many of the banky, the corners of Zandvoort. Obviously, there's a lot of elevation, a lot of camber, but when you have more grip, you are simply able to drive around the outside of the guy, which, is exactly what we could have had, because the DRS wasn't, very effective going down the main straight, unlike, for example, in that race, which I won for Scuderia Ferrari, which you could have seen. So, at that point, it was looking pretty good, like, okay, we would have jumped Hajar, maybe even Verstappen, go to the 4th place, and, take it from there, right? But instead, what happened was that Hamilton, through the bank in turn 3, it was a very weird accident, right? Because you could see that he braked so early, even going over that king, he was already off the throttle, basically decelerating, kind of recharging the battery, but still keeping within a second of Russell. Then went through the banky turn, got a little bit wide, got with a snap of an oversteer, corrected it just well, but I think didn't realize that that barrier actually kind of went, a little bit towards the track, and, just clipped it a little bit at bang. The wheel was ripped off. That's game over for Hamilton, and because Leclerc just stopped, so that was a disastrous time, because of course then he lost the position to Russell, right? So we then had the safety car, and Leclerc made, one of the bravest moves. It's so great, to see. It's kind of like when I'm fighting, right, for Scuderia Ferrari with this SM1000T N18 Formula 1 Racing Simulator, that's what you have to do. You have to have the passion. Great overtake, around the outside the turns. I believe there are 11, 12. There's a great Leclerc, left, wheels, both front and rear, obviously in the gravel, just getting, past Russell, probably, the move of the season, because it's so difficult to pull it out there. And then in the DRS zone where you have to, brake very hard, turn, the car is unstable. And I think he caught the Russell by surprise, and this was actually a key move, because I believe Leclerc did. Again, we couldn't overtake, Hajar in the Racing Bulls, and couldn't overtake, Verstappen. But what happened, especially after the safety cars, was that you could have seen that, the McLarens were quite weak on the hard tires, right? So they didn't build up the lead of over 5 seconds. They were only a couple of seconds ahead of Verstappen, and Verstappen was clearly struggling. He was on the mediums. Here on the alternate strategy, which I felt was maybe a bit better, because again, it gives you at least a chance to attack. And, then what happened is obviously that when the gap appeared, I thought this was a great opportunity that actually Antonelli took, because after Leclerc hit Russell a little bit, Russell obviously had a bit of a damage, but Russell anyways, he just couldn't keep up, right? And Antonelli was then able to get past, but he was about 3-5 seconds behind Leclerc. He stopped for the soft tires with less than 20 laps to go, and this is exactly what I would have done, because again, you only, drop 1 or 2 positions, right? And, with the tire offset, it will be relatively easier to overtake, because you can have a really good run out, from the final corner, and if not, the second DRS zone is, quite possible, because there is a lot of the traction zones, 3rd, 4th, 5th gear, right? And, if the guy doesn't have, is, one has showed it that, for example, the old tires, right? You are easily able to get right behind him and overtake, like for example, Alonso was often doing in the back of the field. Yeah, so great move there. So we also then stopped because obviously the undercut is very powerful around Zandvoort. You can easily make a couple of seconds. And Leclerc emerged just around 1 second ahead of Antonelli, right? But when you go around the Tarzan turn, the turn one, obviously, it's all about the radius, right? So coming out of the pit lane, you have a very tight radius, right? So you can see it often, in a real life, right? You can often go, almost full speed, around the outside, whereas on the inside, you really have to go slow, right? So actually, it is a shorter distance. Yes, it is. But with the sharper angle, you have to stay second, third gear, whereas you're doing fourth and fifth gear. So as a result, Antonelli was behind, going over that king into that infamous turn 3 where Hamilton crashed, and then Antonelli went for a very opportunistic move, but misjudged it. And I know he's a teenager, one of the youngest drivers. I know that even my family, especially my mom and sister like him because of the Czech girlfriend, which is crazy. But this was just a stupid move because he just couldn't, even though he had the full steering lap, he just basically ran into Leclerc, and had to hit, the rear tire. But instead of just spinning, set Leclerc, into the wall, ripped off. The whole front of the car was gone, and yeah, double DNF. We had a disqualification DNF, as a result, we don't have even half of the points of McLaren. And, of course, Antonelli got penalized. He should have gotten bid points on the license because that's another racing line, even though, for example, normally I do like to take, that inner line, but clearly everybody knows, in Zandvoort, you do not take that line. And he did, and, he screwed up, and, it cost us a really, really good result because I believe that we would have been able to stay ahead of it, and, we would have been able to catch Racing Bulls and Verstappen and overtake them, right? And if Hamilton was there, obviously he would just pick up the spoils, right? So that's a real pity because, Verstappen in the end finished second. As Norris's, engine blew up after that second safety car for the second, Ferrari retirement, right? Because at the turn 3, obviously, it's very difficult, to clear the cars. So you have to bunch everybody up. And because, he retired, meaning Norris, which might have a serious, and I believe will have a serious implications on the World Championship. As a result, we would have been then, very likely, if not second, then third or fourth. And, I'm sure that Leclerc would attack Piastri maybe a bit more than Verstappen because, hey, for Piastri, if he gets 25 or 18 points, that's still a massive gain in the championship. And Leclerc could have won the race. Maybe if Hamilton was there, I thought he looked even a little bit quicker. It could have happened. The strategy was, I think, spot on. But yeah, I cannot believe it. It's hopefully in Monza we will turn the 19th, 20th place. The only two cars that didn't finish, the Ferraris, will be 1-2, and it's really needed. The massive boost of the morale. It's really important because this was just the worst start. I really didn't expect it, but sometimes. I believe that we've hit the lowest low of the season, and the only way is up with the 1-2 in Monza, right? So let's take a look over here. How exactly the whole race pan out over here. So let me turn it around over here for you guys, so you can see Piastri happily over here winning, of course. Yeah, I hope you guys can see it just fine. Okay. So yeah, Piastri over here, winning for McLaren, and that will have serious implications. Obviously, he makes up a lot of points, for what happened to him in Australia, right? When he lost 24 to Norris. Now Norris lost, at least 18 to him. Yeah, as a result, Piastri, now he doesn't even need to finish in Monza. He'll still be leading the championship. So yeah, we can see then Verstappen finished second. 5 GPs over here, he's always been either first or second. So, if next year he still manages to finish in the top 2, I guess, Zandvoort Dutch Grand Prix is unlikely to then return to the Formula 1 calendar for many, many years. It will be legendary, and, I think one of his greatest achievements in Formula 1, the fact that he can be so strong at the home GP. But what's maybe even more impressive in this race is the third place of Isaac Hadjar, who survived all of these overtaking moves by obviously Leclerc and then also Russell, who finished fourth. In the end, quite a distance behind the Racing Bulls. Fifth, then Alexander Albon. He started low, but made a great start, and he'll be happy, finishing there. 6, Oliver Behrman. So the Haas, they ran that alternate strategy, as you can have seen, and the second safety car, when of course Leclerc, was spun around by Antonelli and crashed into the barrier. Of course, that helped them out a lot. And for Behrman, this is his best result ever since that Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, when he was the Ferrari driver getting the 7th place. So congratulations to him. I believe he doubles his tally for this season. 7, Lance Stroll. So Lance Stroll, there was a lot of criticism over here of him, especially after the qualifying, but he finished ahead of his illustrious teammate Fernando Alonso. Yuki Tsunoda only lowly 9th. It must hurt that Racing Bull is in a top 3, and 10 that Esteban Ocon getting points for Haas. Lots of firsts, obviously first podium for Hajar, and also, for example, first Grand Slam for Piastri. I'm often getting these Grand Slams because he's scored the pole position, fastest lap, and led every lap of the race. And this is the implications it has for the World Championship. So this is our 2025 Formula 1 Drivers Championship. So over here we can see Oscar Piastri leading with 309 points, boosting a lead of 34 points over his teammate Lando Norris, who of course has 275 points. Further 70 points down is Max Verstappen, the reigning champion, who pretty much knows now he has fallen over 100 points, and with only 9 races to go and 3 sprints, I think he can wave goodbye to equaling Michael Schumacher's, who is the only 5 consecutive titles, who's the only driver who has managed that feat, and that's how it should forever stay. So over here we have our top 3 drivers. 4th is then George Russell, who's gotten a bit more of a buffer over Leclerc. He's on 184 points. Obviously 5th, Charles Leclerc, Scuderia Ferrari, 151 points, not scoring thanks to Antonelli, and Lewis Hamilton with that very, very strange mistake. I believe he, just took it too lightly. Unlike in Imola, for example, I believe in 2021, when he hit the barrier, here, he simply hit it, about 50 kph, faster, and it ripped off the wheel. What a pity otherwise. It would have been only a minor mistake, but with the large consequences, so he's still on 109 points. Andrea Kimi Antonelli still stays 7 for Mercedes, but now equal on 64 points with 8th place Alexander Albon for Williams. And 9th, obviously, is then Nico Hülkenberg with 37 points. And 10th over here is Isaac Hadjar, Racing Bulls, also on 37 points. Both heroes, obviously, who have gotten on the last step on the podium in the last 4 races, the last 4 Grand Prix, of course, and deservedly so then in the top 10. Now 11th place is then Lance Stroll, 32 points, keeping that place, as the leading Aston Martin from 12th. The 2-time world champion Fernando Alonso for Aston Martin, who is on 30 points. 13 is then Esteban Ocon, Haas, 28 points. 14, Pierre Gasly, Alpine, 20 points. Almost scored the points, but you can see, if you don't change the tires, he has lost so many places, but still, he's ahead on the countdown of 15th place Liam Lawson. Racing Bulls 20 points, of course 16 must be now Oliver Behrman has 16 points, who has dispatched Carlos Sainz, who is now 17. Williams, you would think 17 points, well maybe that's what's going to be happening after Monza, because Williams is expected to score points there, but he's only got 16 points, 17th place in the standing. 18, Gabriel Bortoleto for Sauber, 14 points. 19, Yuki Tsunoda, Red Bull, 12 points. Pretty much Tsunoda is the last, isn't he? Because 20th, Franco Colapinto, Alpine, 0 points. He almost scored points here. 21st, Jack Doohan, Alpine, 0 points, of course, didn't compete. Colapinto actually finished 11th, so you can see, that's a disastrous results, for some drivers, especially Sainz and of course Tsunoda. So for the 2025 Constructors Championship, this is how it looks like. McLaren obviously maintaining that lead, that's 584 points, and we are still second on 260 points. Mercedes have gotten a little bit closer, but thanks to the 10-second penalty for Antonelli for destroying Leclerc's race and then speeding in a pit lane, additional 5-second penalty, it means that Mercedes didn't make so much ground, only these 12 points by Russell, so Mercedes has 248 points. 3rd place overall. Fourth is then Red Bull, 214 points. Fifth, of course, Williams, 80 points. Sixth is then Aston Martin, 62 points, and Racing Bull 60 points. So a lot to play for there in the midfield. It's quite an interesting battle. Eight is then Sauber, 51 points to become Audi, of course, next year. You can see a lot of our Audi videos with that convertible there and on our YouTube channel. 9 Haas, then 44 points. Very strong results there, and 10 Alpine, 20 points. So overall, yeah, this is not the result that we wanted. So this is the Constructors' Championship, which yeah, I think second place, consolidation will be the best that we can hope for. And that was the Drivers' Championship here. Congratulations to the winner, Oscar Piastri, who equaled his mentor and especially his manager, Mark Webber. So he's becoming very quickly, after obviously it will be, some distance till he catches Jack Brabham, who is the most successful Australian driver of all time, the 3-time champion from the 60s. But yeah, this is very impressive. So, yeah, the Dutch Grand Prix has, really, for us it was a terrible race. But of course, yeah, sometimes this is the way it goes. So, we are very disappointed, but hey, we will just peg down, go from this rather, windy, breezy, kind of a slippery place, yeah, no pun intended, and just head down to the south, and win Monza, get that one too, because, we have the ultimate speed. I believe we will be super competitive, and it would be great to see, Hamilton's first podium if Monza, if he wins, if Leclerc gets that third Monza win. Again, Hamilton has won there many times, so definitely stay tuned, for the race introduction, because we want to kind of forget this race as soon as possible, but also learn from it. It was an encouraging performance. I think we've thrown away a double podium that was definitely, on the cards due to the mishap with Norris's engine. And you would have at least one restart where you could have challenged Piastri. I believe if we would have been ahead of McLaren's, Norris couldn't overtake Verstappen for 10 laps, anything would have been possible. So very, very disappointing, but I'm sure we will be winning this Formula 1 Grand Prix winning trophy soon. So I hope you enjoyed here with this beautiful Scuderia Red Retina iMac. Everything about the Dutch Grand Prix, round 15 of the 2025 FIA Formula 1 World Championship. But now it's time to get rid of obviously this full long sleeve fashion to go for the short sleeve for the Ferrari Team Pro, the 2025 Team Pro Polo that we will don in order to win in Monza, right?